How often it seems that our world is a product of our imagination, something envisioned by a science fiction writer, then made real. Robots wander through our factories performing tasks with unerring precision. Lasers enable us to do what was only imagined a few years back. Tiny computer chips smaller than a fingernail hurl us outward to worlds beyond our own and inward to the worlds within the human mind. The images you see are high technology, and so are these. The time was 1876, the place, Philadelphia. The machine was called the Corliss Steam Colossus. It weighed 700 tons and was heralded at the time as the most advanced technological achievement of the Industrial Revolution. It could pump water, comb wool, sew cloth, print newspapers, spin cotton, fold envelopes, make shoes. 8,000 machines spread over 13 acres. There was hardly anything this complex of machines couldn't do. Yet if the Corliss Steam Colossus was high technology, what then is this? Technology, it seems, is an evolving concept in constant motion through time. To the people who attended the Philadelphia Exposition of 1876, this great machine was certainly high technology. And the reason was this: it was in itself, like the technologies of our own time, a catalyst for change. It necessitated a change in the way we do things, the way we think, the way we work, the way we do business, the way we live, the way we view our world and the possibilities for the future. Today, high technology is changing society in myriad ways, both dramatic and subtle. And it is inevitable that change will continue. We can accept the change or we can reject it. If we reject our changing technologies, we will be left behind. If we accept them, we will pass through the threshold of a new age of possibility. It was true in the time of the Corliss Steam Colossus, and it's just as true in our own time and times to come. Hello, my name is Alex Burton, and this is the Business File. And as you have probably surmised, our program today is on high technology and its impact on the business environment. We will explore how advancing technology is changing the way we do business, the way we work, and the way we manage. And we'll also see that our technologies are so pervasive, it's impossible to examine them without exploring the larger issues of their impact on society. And we'll look into the future to see where this great technological roller coaster ride is going to take us. Right now, we're in Los Angeles, California, to talk with Dr. Richard Byrne. Dr. Byrne is president and founder of the Byrne Group, a consortium of speakers and consultants who are helping industries deal with the problems and opportunities of high technological change. Dr. Byrne, it's a real pleasure to be with you today, and I'm looking forward to our visit.
Well, thank you, Alex. I'm glad to be here. Glad to take part.
Dr. Byrne, could we begin by trying to isolate a working definition? When we use the term high technology, what does it mean?
I don't know. I think it really always means two things to most people who deal in high technology. One is there's always some kind of intelligence built into the device. That is, it'll follow instructions. It'll do what I call if-then. A typewriter, you quit typing, that's it. But with a computer, you give it an instruction, go get a cup of coffee and come back, and it's still doing things. So there is some intelligence built into the technology. I think the second thing is, key to high technology is leveraging. That is, you get a much bigger bang for the buck out of high technology than you do low technology. For instance, a shoe is a technology for transportation. A skateboard is a little higher. A car is higher still. A jet, a rocket, you know, each of these leverage you almost exponentially. And so a rocket is a much higher technology than a shoe.
Well, Dr. Byrne, we could make a laundry list of high technologies, robotics, lasers, sophisticated communication systems. But what we really are concerned with in our program is the impact of high technology on business, on people, on the workplace, on society. So let me put this in the form of a question. What is the impact of high technology on the business climate in general?
I think high technology is the key determinant of the change in business, where business is going. Right now, oddly enough, America, which has always been in the lead, is behind. We're still ahead in production of the high technology itself, designing circuits and chips and computers and so forth. But as far as the implementation of the technology in the workplace, in the plant, the factory, the office, the home, it's coming fast here, but I think it's coming faster in some other countries. It's going to be a massive change, though.
Why do you say a massive change?
I've been working for the last couple of years on a book called Breakthrough, we're finishing now, and studying the breakthrough phenomenon. There's a difference between change and a breakthrough. A breakthrough, there's a quantum leap. That is, you can't do it at all, and then Roger Bannister runs the 4-minute mile, and suddenly people all over the world can do it, because what changes is your mind. It's not the technology that changes, it's your mind changes about the technology. So I think the mind change has already occurred, but the behavior change hasn't. Most American business people know that if they don't take advantage of the leveraging of high technology, they'll fall behind. They may have been ahead 2 years ago, but they'll be behind in a year if they don't learn to use the new technologies. But the behavior hasn't changed. They themselves are not yet using the computer and have not installed the robotics and have not put in the fiber optics network and whatever it may be. So we're right in the midst. It's John Nesbitt calls it the age of the parenthesis. We're not the way it used to be, and we're not the way it's going to be yet, but we're somewhere in between.
You talk of massive change, of needed change in behavior, of being in the midst of change. The key seems to hinge on people being ready, being willing to accept the new technologies. Well, is there a difference in the impact of technology on people and their reaction to it?
Well, I think there is. I think that people who are involved in high technology fall madly in love. I mean, they are passionate. They are stoked like me. I mean, I'm stoked out of my brain about my involvement in it. And people who are not involved in it are very fearful. I mean, it's really like going to the Addams family house, you know. Here's monsters in the closets, and there's an enormous amount of phobia around the technology. So I'd say that it's a kind of like a litmus test. You know, the acid turns it one color and the base turns it another. So people have a response based on their own psychology, based on their own needs and what they're doing.
Dr. Byrne, what you've said so far has given us insight into the impact of high technology on people and business. But now let me ask you this. Are there any critical messages that you can extract from this high-tech environment that we need to focus upon?
Yes, I think so. It's interesting. People think the technologies are about the technologies. That is, if you learn to use a personal computer, you learn to use a personal computer. I think that's the booby prize. I think what we have to learn is we have to learn the need to learn. That is, American business, American government, education, families need to recognize that we're in an era where learning is the prize, not learning to use a video cassette recorder or learning to use electronic mail. And the one thing that I would say about high technology is the only thing you can be sure of is it'll change. It will change. Whatever the state of the art is this morning, it will change in 2 months. And so if you think the prize is learning this technology today, you missed the point.
Dr. Byrne, I'd like to pause here a moment so we might join two men who have been dealing with the kind of change that you're talking about. And I'd like you to stay with us for a round-robin discussion. In Dallas, Texas, we will talk with Jerry Redmond, Director of Engineering for Telecommunications at Rockwell International. He's been an engineer for 28 years and has been deeply involved with changing technology. And in Midlothian, Texas, we will talk with Larry Dalkey, General Foreman of Maintenance at Chaparral Steel Company. Chaparral is an example of a traditional kind of process, steel making, which has been infused with state-of-the-art technology. Larry, thanks for talking with us.
Thank you, Alex, for inviting me.
And Jerry, thanks for joining our round-robin discussion.
Well, it's good to have you with us, Alex.
We've been discussing the broader implications of high technology, and I'd like now to focus in on the workplace and the worker. Let's start with you, Dr. Byrne. What do you see as the impact of high technology on the workplace?
Well, first of all, some workplaces aren't going to look anything like they look now. When you go to the Nissan plant and some of the other plants, Mitsubishi and others, you walk in and the factory's dark. I mean, there's no lights on because they're robots. And when you walk in, a proximity switch turns on the light so you can look around, good, everything fine, great, and you walk away. So it just isn't like it is now at all. Second is many executives are no longer going to have offices. I don't have an office anymore. I mean, I have a corporate office, but it's not where I live. I'm only there once a month or so. And so I have a portable office, a little portable terminal, and my office is wherever I am.
So you say the workplace will not only look different, but for some of us it won't even exist. at least not in the traditional sense. Well, Larry, what have you seen as the impact of high technology on the workplace? Has it changed?
Machinery's shrunken. Instead of making parts bigger, they're made differently these days. Certainly the panel boards and the systems, the electrical systems that controlled all the mechanical machinery has shrunken from a room full of objects to something that you can just about hold in your hand. From a mechanical standpoint, now you have more friction-free surfaces, smaller systems, systems that used to take up areas that were cumbersome. Now it's all shrunken down. A lot less capital involved in the same process.
Well, Jerry, what about Rockwell? How has high technology impacted your work setting?
One thing that we're trying to do in Rockwell is to form very small, hard-hitting, entrepreneurial design teams. We know that we're a big corporation, and yet the only way that you make things happen in a hurry is to get a small group of people around a task and let them hit it in a hard-hitting fashion. And one of the mechanisms we're using to make that easy for the workers is to group them in small cellular type work environments. And this particular instrument is just one of the tools that helps us do that in an easy fashion, so that we can gather people together in a small home-like atmosphere, let them do their work. And it's taken people out of the bullpen, as we used to refer to it, which was the long, very open room with all types of drawing boards and desks in it, and let them get back into an environment that is more home-like, more comfortable, more stimulating to innovation. At the same time, though, these types of workstations permit you to include people that may be in some other part of the building or some other city, or even for that matter, I guess, some other country, where you can have people with similar machines participate as a part of the team and yet be physically located in some remote location.
In a sense, I suppose, technology has removed the walls of the workplace. Dr. Burns' office is wherever he is. It seems the same might be true of the factory. Dr. Byrne, let's focus now on people. What will be the effect of high technology on the worker?
If the worker can commit himself or herself to learning the new technology, whatever it is, the impact is generally going to be very, very positive. That is, you get lots of mileage out of high technology because it leverages who you are. If the worker resists the high technology, it doesn't want to learn it and sabotages or whatever, you get no leveraging. In fact, then it's kind of like towing a Maserati around instead of riding it around. Okay? Some people are so resistant to the technology that they would rather leave the field of work they've chosen than learn to work the new way. So I would say that you have the gamut, and again, it depends on the attitude of the worker. It doesn't depend on the technology.
Let's apply this notion of leveraging directly to the workplace. Jerry, Dr. Burns says the impact of high technology is up to the worker. If he rejects it, he's in for a hard time. If he accepts it, he becomes leveraged or more powerful. For your engineers who have embraced the new technology, what has it really done for them?
And what that really has done is that it permits the engineer to lay aside or let the machine do a lot of the mundane type of work that we used to do mostly on paper and with a slide rule or a calculator, and frees the engineer's time to spend his efforts and his talents in the invention side of the problem. And I think that, to me, is one of the key issues as far as the real impact, is that it's let the individual designer spend his time really for what we've hired him to do, and that is to invent. And that's a key issue for us.
Okay, Jerry, the engineer is relieved of the mundane and now he can create and invent. But what kind of pressure does that put on the engineer to stay current?
The fact that high technology is moving very fast very quickly has led us to believe that the half-life, as we refer to it, of our engineers is somewhere in 4 to 5 year category. This requires that an engineer spend more time learning about what's happening, as well as spending time putting his talents to work in the invention of products that we would like to take into the marketplace. So we're seeing the worker impacted from the viewpoint of us having to provide him more time in the learning process. And every 5 years, he in essence has to begin to relearn what he came out of college with from a technical know-how viewpoint.
Larry, so far we've identified two primary ways that technology will impact the worker. First, it allows a person more freedom in terms of using his or her talents. Second, it requires a person to constantly update his or her skills and knowledge. From your experience, are there other ways high technology has impacted the worker?
He has to know more. His ability to deal with machinery takes more education. He's got to, his interpersonal relationships have changed. He's not dealing with as many people as he used to. Now the computer is passing on information where he used to have to do it by hand or by word of mouth. Now one word of information placed into a box can be spread to 50 people within a second, something that couldn't have been done years back. These types of equipment, it's actually produced a more sophisticated worker, a worker that has to interface with the machinery in a more sophisticated format using different languages than he used to be used to.
Dr. Byrne, what do you see as the impact of high tech on managers and managerial practices?
I think we're going to have to develop completely new styles of managing. Key thing, Nesbitt again talks about high tech and high touch, that in a high tech era, there's a very strong need for human interaction, people to people, face to face. So if you do electronic mail, you have to get together periodically socially, just because being human is about being together. That's what being human is all about. Some people forget that. So I think managers are going to have to develop more concern. When a secretary sits at a word processor for eight hours a day, we are now learning that it has very serious negative impact on their physiology and on their psychology and on their nervous systems, and so they've got to be given other kinds of things to do. So it's a false economy to think that we're increasing productivity by having somebody type 8 hours a day on a word processor until they faint and then just throw somebody else in. So I think there's going to be a change in management styles.
Jerry, Dr. Byrne has said manager styles will change. What do you see as the impact on your managers?
One aspect is the fact that with these types of workstations, the engineer is now able to do jobs much more quickly, much more accurately. And there's also the aspect that several engineers can do a lot more things in parallel. This puts a demand on a manager of having to manage a lot more parallel activities. And to assist him in that regard, we've automated much of the administrative aspects of managing engineering projects, schedules, costs, those types of things. And with the automation reports available to the manager, he's now able to manage by dealing only with the exceptions or the things that are outside of schedule, which permits him to spend much more time on the technical aspects. And he can now guide the project much more from an innovation viewpoint. And the administrative things are relieved from him.
Larry, has the availability of information through high technology affected your managers?
People now take information from the computers that they've never had at their disposal in the past. The amount of information that they can deal with in making decisions has vastly increased. They can become over-reliant, though, on the computer also. And that, in my position as a manager, I have to be cautious towards that. For instance, last week I asked the foreman how we were doing out in the shop. His answer was, he turned to the computer, hit a couple buttons, and he said, well, we just rolled 900 tons, pretty good shift. I says, pal, you can't run maintenance from the office. You got to be out there on the equipment. You lose something if you totally rely on the machines to do all the work.
Gentlemen, I only wish we had more time to explore these issues. Talking with the three of you has made me feel I'm at the very center of what's happening today. Dr. Byrne, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I'm honored to be part of your program. Thank you.
Jerry, thanks for letting us visit you.
I appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions.
And Larry, it's been a good conversation.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be part of your project.
When we examine the issues of high technology, it becomes apparent we live in exciting times. This age of ours has been called the third wave, and we're riding that wave into a future that's often difficult to even imagine. Change is occurring so fast, it's hard to know what the world will be like just a few years down the road. Well, today we are also in Minneapolis to talk with Professor Arthur Harkins of the University of Minnesota. He is what's known as a futurist, an expert in a new and exciting field called anticipatory anthropology. Professor Harkins, it's a pleasure to be with you today, looking into the future.
Pleasure for me, Alex.
Professor Harkins, where are we headed? What's going to be the impact of high technology on society at large?
What high tech seems to be doing is creating an interesting class system. We're moving away from multi-level class systems into what some say could become the two-class working society, in which you have about 90 to 95% of the people living pretty much in the same general area of means to live their lives, and maybe 5 to 10% of the people living what we would now call a very wealthy or a very upper middle class style. Now, that worries me because I don't think that fits very well with the upward mobility kind of attitude, kind of ideology the society has had. What I would like to see is much more mixing up in the society so that individual entrepreneurs can achieve spectacular gains, but still somehow fit within a general sort of homogeneous ideal of what the American society is all about.
So we could see a dramatic change in our social structure. How will high technology impact on other areas, quality of life, education? Let's start with quality of life.
What we mean by quality of life basically is how well am I living compared to somebody else? How well am I living compared to how I want to live? These are highly subjective sorts of interpretations. And so if you look at history, you find that overall the quality of life has increased as technology has become more sophisticated and people have become more able to take advantage of that technology. But in the short haul, when you're going through a rapid transition in technology as we are now, the quality of life questions can get to be rather acute because people undergoing a lot of change are often hurting and they may not feel very comfortable about even a rosy picture of the near future, let alone the far future, when they're hurting right now, going through job retraining, having to remortgage or sell their homes, watching as their savings dwindle, trying to make the transition from factory floor equipment to robotics programming and so on.
What about education? What kind of changes will need to be made as we move into this new age of high technology?
The number one thing educators need to do is automate themselves out of work. Now that is the number one thing you need to do on the assembly line, to get the workers out and the robots in. The number one thing you need to do in the office is to get the secretaries out, the middle managers out, and get the expert systems and office automation systems in. And there's no reason why we should not be doing that now in education. Why? Because it increases efficiency in doing what we know how to do, which is to teach certain subject matter in certain ways, using video discs or other means, computer graphics. It opens up human labor to create new things to do research on effectiveness of what we're doing, to create new curricula, to create new means of delivery systems and so on. And that is where the real efficiency in education can come.
Dr. Harkins, you've made some major statements about changes in society and education that are influenced by the high technology environment. Now, what are some keys to successfully negotiate those changes?
The psychology of adaptation is well studied. We know from anthropology, sociology, social psychology, and other disciplines what it takes to deal with a rapid change environment. It takes an open mind, takes an opportunity orientation, takes a willingness, and this is the tough one, to change your behavior in order to take advantage of opportunities and to shape opportunities.
You speak of opportunities, an opportunity orientation, shaping opportunities. I wonder if you might elaborate.
The transition between one type of society, one type of personality and another, can be seen largely in terms of problems, or it can be seen largely in terms of opportunities. And I would like to see people shift away from the problem focus to the opportunity focus. You could say, I think with a lot of justification, that where there is a lot of change, there is a lot of opportunity, if you are looking for opportunity. There'll be a lot of problems, too, if you're looking for them, and sometimes they'll be there even if you're not. So I would say what we need to do is have our institutions focus more on opportunity.
Professor Harkins, I would like to thank you sincerely for sharing your thoughts with us today. You've given us all an exciting perspective on the shape of things to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.
It is apparent we are on the threshold of a new age. And quite frankly, this age of the parentheses, as Dr. Byrne has quoted John Nesbitt, will be a painful transition. Change has never been one of mankind's favorite environments, and when change is as rapid as it is now and accelerating all the time, it creates uncertainty and fear and confusion. But as Professor Harkins said, the opportunity is far greater than the problem. Until next time, I'm Alex Burton, and this has been The Business File.
The preceding program is part of a college credit course.